I know, right?
Mhm.
No,
Yes, okay, so,
So,
exactly, so there is no report. Okay. Item 15, consideration of chief executive officer compensation study.
I'll move to accept that study for reference purposes.
I'll second that.
Is there any conversation regarding the compensation study? Okay, all those in favor of accepting the compensation study?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Item 16, consideration of chief executive officer contract. As to the next item regarding approval of the chief executive officer employment agreement, I am required by law to indicate prior to any vote on the chief executive officer employment contract that the contract has a term of 3 years beginning July 1st, 2019 and ending on June 30th, 2022. I'm sorry, 2022. Provides the following. Number one, an annual work year minimum of 224 days. Item 2, a base annual salary of $171,195, which is recommended by the Compensation Committee. Number 3, sick leave to accrue at the rate of 1 day per month for a total of 12 days per year. Number 4, participation in designated employee health and other benefits programs and plans as provided to the school's certificated employees. And number 5, participation in CalSTRS as applicable. I would also like to note that the annual salary is wholly within keeping within the compensation comparability study the board has received and accepted. Okay. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Moving on. Consideration of Chief Executive Officer's goals. Do I have a motion?
So move.
I second.
Do we have any discussion?
I would point out, for the board, I provided you a one-page summary because the board, the goals were somewhat lengthy. The one-page summary simply indicates how the goals connect to our LCAP, our strategic plan, and our ongoing accreditation. And that's just exactly what the goals are going to be. And I'm happy to take questions.
Will those go into the minutes?
Absolutely.
Well, as you know, by the terms of the contract, we can meld those goals into what the board sets as your goals for your evaluation. So under those, can we leave the motion as is, or do we need?
Well, I've got some thoughts. I'd like to receive this as part of the information to inform whatever subset of this body does the actual committee work on honing up some goals. But I'm real hesitant to approve these as the goals for accountability purposes for our CEO. And I find them inordinately broad, and they lack specificity, so that it would be very difficult to measure progress towards these goals. And out of fairness, any goal that you can't measure is really not fair for who using it to measure by. And
So John, what would be your motion?
I think it's good input. It's really the meat of the strategic goals. So anything that we would do needs to be within the strategic goals. The strategic goals of the school, I think, are too broad for the specific actions by which the CEO is going to be measured.
Will you
And-
withdraw
and-
your
and-
motion?
I think we would be better off having more specific goals, measurable goals, hopefully way less than 10, with real, we'd like you to do this, and this is how we're gonna measure the outcome. We'd like you to do that, and this is how we measure the outcome. But I think this is too broad. I'd like to just accept this as input and go back to the drawing board, dovetail whatever we do in with whatever the, the job description and everything else, so that it makes a nice, neat, tight package. Otherwise, it's not fair.
Did you want to see numbers attached to this, showing
Well,
progress?
well, yeah, I mean,
5%?
Frankly, it should be tied to, when the dashboard comes out, if math is stinky, then the goals are going to be do what you got to do to bring up math scores. But it really ought to be based on real world. What would you like to see done differently, or expanded, or continued with some sort of specifics? Whether that's the EL population, or math in general, or science scores, or number of kids that are A through G, or pick your matrix.
What the motion that we have in front of us is to accept the goals as presented.
I personally would be voting no on that.
No, I don't think that's to accept the goals. The
Receive.
motion is the board is asked to consider the CEO's
And so
goals.
what motion
So,
did you make?
The board, the board is asked to consider, we will consider the CEO goals along with, well, okay.
I think
Yeah, I
any
think we have to-
term.
See, what I'm hearing is what we really want is something to the point of, the board is asked to consider the CEO's goals along with input from the board for what those goals are going to be.
Well, I think this is her input, but these are really goals that the board creates to inform the CEO. This is the direction we'd like you to focus. She's given us some input on what she thinks. Okay, thank you very much. But the responsibility falls on us as the governing body to determine the direction with specificity, the direction we'd like to see her put her efforts. And those should be voiced in the form of goals.
Or I was just going to say, so the motion could be really is the board will receive the CEO's goals as
You could almost do a motion to table and bring it back. The fact that we've got them all sitting on our desk here.
well.
It says that we've received them, but I don't know that this particular agenda item requires us to do much of anything except.
In the
Table.
past, we'd actually discussed your goals. We had a discussion in previous years, and we haven't really discussed them yet.
Right, well, the goals are directly, these are just the LCAP goals and the strategic plan goals. I gave you everything this time. Most of the time I don't. This time I did, because I wasn't sure what direction the board was gonna wanna go in terms of evaluation. It is, every one of the goals within the broad goals has metrics attached, but the broad goals don't. So underneath each broad goal, there are multiple sub-goals with metrics. It's a lot. These are things that we look at in an ongoing manner. However, it's certainly within the board's purview to select a focus. Heaven knows that would be easier to manage. So the board could simply receive, move to receive this input at this time and then move forward.
I think it's too broad to be fair to you.
As you suggest, you could move forward and become, choose something more specific within all of this that I've given you.
In a world where there is no conceivable way there could ever be any disagreement, then we don't need to be specific. But I don't live in that world. And so in order to be fair to you, I think it's important to have everything nailed down.
So if you simply accept this as input and then,
Would you amend your motion so it's clear we're accepting it as input for our consideration?
I have no
In
problem.
establishing the goals for the
And,
CEO.
right, in establishing the goals. Will you, who seconded that? Did you second that or did
I'll
you?
second it. Somebody, anybody.
Jillian,
Gianna that seconded?
it was Gianna that seconded it. Did
So-
you get that?
No, I didn't, because I was trying to put in some other notes. So we're gonna amend his motion to just be considering the goal?
No, we're
or
receiving
Receiving as input.
As in-
as input.
As input
To establish.
determine the CEO's goals for the 2019-2020 school year.
Is there any further?
Just one question, is it for 2019 to 20, or is it for the length of the contract?
No,
For-
Just
for
here.
the 1 year?
Yeah. We could choose when we set the goals to set long-range goals, but
There may be,
right now we're just talking about,
there could be tasks that
right.
are 2 or 3 year prospects.
As a quick point of discussion, will we have a committee that works to
Yes.
set this up? Because we're already in September, it would be very
Yes, we
challenging
need
to
have
give
ready to
this
go.
out
Yeah.
in
We're-
January.
That's what we're working towards, October, November. Okay. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the amended motion?
All right.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Item number 18, consideration of revised elementary school calendar. Dr. Herman.
and I provided you with a one-page summary of where we've been and where we are. So the original that was approved, what was proposed, what the board decided, how they compare.
This is actually a schedule that we voted on.
You are not holding the piece of paper that.
No, and I'm looking for that piece of paper that you
There's
have
so many
in your
pieces.
hand.
I know, I apologize.
I got it.
There's
Revised
three.
elementary.
This one is
Yeah.
called Revised Elementary
Revised.
School Calendar Information.
I know we voted on 3 different calendars. We had little backup calendars, right?
This was the one that we went to
This was
September
calendar
19th.
number
It's not in the
2.
handouts, but it is attached.
Right, the actual calendar, call it the actual calendar, would you mind?
I saw the actual calendar,
So
but I
this
don't
particular-
find that.
Really?
I don't have
It's on the back.
that.
No, that's
Oh,
not.
I don't have
that.
that one, that's like the only piece of paper I don't have.
It's so exciting. I don't have it.
I don't either.
Patty
It was
and I don't
attached
have
to
it.
the agenda, I apologize, maybe we
Oh,
didn't
maybe
photocopy it, in
No, I
which case I'm
have.
sorry.
Well, let me see the agenda.
No.
I've got it in my big packet.
It's in your packet?
Yeah, and I'm sure it's on the,
So you're the only one who got it in your packet, and I
John's
apologize for that.
let me go to,
In a nutshell, the difference, this one went from, at our special meeting, I presented you with a calendar that had us starting 1 week late.
Right.
So-
if you brought your,
And we moved to go to
iPad, it's-
September
it's-
19th.
no, that sheet's not
It's
on
also,
No.
call it the other one, call it the.
here. Jillian gave it.
That's the one I have attached.
There you go, here's the memo,
Okay.
here's the chart that shows.
Okay.
And what it shows is, compared to the Monday start, the final column shows we're starting Thursday the 19th. We have no student-free days instead of 2 student-free days. There was
No change.
no change, and we're down to 175 days. That's what's required, so we're okay. That bought us the 3 days to go from Monday to Thursday.
Yeah.
And it looked like when I looked at the other calendar, our Thanksgiving break, winter break, spring break
They aligned.
aligned with it.
Correct.
It's one of those things, we knew we weren't gonna really be head over heels, and we know all the reasons why, because of
Yeah.
staggered
Thanks.
days and everything. I don't know that we've got any choice. I'll move to approve it.
Second?
Is there any further conversation? All those in favor of approving the amended elementary school calendar? Thank you.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Item 19, consideration of student advisors to the Board of Directors.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Well,
Do we have,
Yeah, we've got, yeah, you'd be surprised if I could Here, I don't have any problems with this memorandum. What I have a problem with is, I think there's two things that are really, are absent. First of all is something in the bylaws of the ASB that accounts for representation at school board meetings. And then the other part that's missing is a part of the board's policy that says that as an affirmative, in concert with, and I can't remember, it's an AB, SB that was passed within the last 12 months that really pressured public schools to have student board members that says in accordance with that, all the provisions and then what our policy is and what they can do and what they can't do. This is a nice affirmation that we want to go that direction, but it's insufficient and lacks clarity on what we're trying to do, both from the ASB standpoint and for the board's standpoint. If we're just going to invite them to sit at the back of the room, we wouldn't even have to do that, because they're certainly welcome to do that.
And I guess that why I wanted to move this is there was a couple of questions I have. One was, are they going to be sitting at the board table? Two, if we are going to that type, which I like the idea, I hesitate to have it a different. It would be someone that should be the same every time. I think that's much better, because then they start to understand how a board works and different things. And, to have someone come in for one meeting and another person, I just don't think they really get an understanding. And at times, I think it's a great learning experience for someone who really is into, understanding it, someone that's making decisions, fiscal decisions. So I look at the high school board, the person they had this year was an incredible young man. I mean, he makes a lot of us look like, well, I wouldn't go, but my suggestion is, like John says, do we have policy? If not, we've got to develop the policy. Two is, I would rather see someone, it's the same person or two people or something.
And it really needs that, and that's why the ASB policies and bylaws are so important. It needs to be a legitimate mechanism for this to be a
Selection.
student voice, not somebody we pick to be the student voice.
exactly.
And that needs to be legitimized through their processes. And then we need to have the process of, okay, there's a student representative, what do we do now? And that needs to be, I think, hardwired into our board policies.
If I can just clarify, my understanding was that we just asked them to kind of put this together as an aside, like it would be nice if we had. So in order to get those
Sure.
things, we have to provide that direction. And I think this is exactly the discussion that we needed to take place in order to do
Sure.
that. So
And if I could piggyback on exactly what you're saying, that's what this is. The board kind of indicated an interest in going this direction. So we started a conversation with ASB,
Got it.
brought this back to start the process. I think the intention, their idea was the same two members, an upperclassman and a lowerclassman would come every time. And then, as the years progressed and that those positions are within the structure of ASB, that would provide some continuity. The lower classmen could become an upperclassman, bring in another lower class. They had all these grand and glorious ideas. There is nothing in policy. You do not have anything in the board's bylaws that allows for this. That would require a change. So if this was to start that conversation, you are absolutely correct that we are not in a position to do that. However, as we move in that direction, I would be thrilled to be able to tell ASB that we're moving in that direction, and they could start coming to meetings, and they could start getting a feel for how it goes, because obviously they're open and they can all do that.
So,
Mark?
Okay. Couple of things. Yes, we want this conversation to go on. I think to have the ASB kids starting to show up just to see what's going on. But a couple of things just based on this piece of paper. Instead of referring to them as student advisors, I believe we should change it to student members, so they feel like they're actually part of the board.
When
not
we
just on the
change
side.
the policy,
Right, well, I'm saying,
Well,
we
it
make
needs
these
to be
notes now, we
consistent
can do that when we do
the
the
state
policy.
law for public schools.
And
That's
instead
the
of
policy.
being
three
selected,
board members, voting members.
No, they don't,
no,
they don't vote.
instead of being selected by ASB, they should be voted on by the student body.
That's part of the
Which they're-
ASB bylaw
right, yeah.
change.
They're already selected in ASB, but, would they be an officer of ASB, which was voted on by
that's
the?
I would say that that's up to them. I'm not sure that that's up to this
Because then that
body.
would be a
I don't want to give
representation of
ASB
the vote.
direction that says
No.
it can't be a committee,
No.
let's say.
Well,
I guess what
well,
I-
except to the extent that we feel like it's reflective of the student body, truly. You know, there's different ways to do it. A long time ago, in a place far away in Lancaster, I worked with the group of kids that put the original board member on at the high school district in 1969.
Thanks, John.
And yeah, it was a long time ago. And there was a student process, and then there was a board process, and that's really what it needs to happen. It was much more complicated because it was 3 little high schools trying to figure out how do we get representation for the whole valley with one person. We barely had telephones and stuff back then, and pigeons and stuff. But
Can
Can
I,
yeah, screen kept breaking
It must have been a
with
long,
the
long
wind.
conversation, John.
But it's much simpler process here, but it really needs to be, something that's
Can I-
student driven, whether it's an elected office, don't know, whether it's the ASB gets together as, whatever their legislative body is, but whatever that is, it needs to, their process needs to be carved in stone, and I'm assuming that all ASB bylaw changes have to come to this body for approval anyway, so.
can I go back to my motion in the sense of, what I really think what we need to do is that give direction to staff that I would like to see this come back as a presentation at our next board meeting. Presentation that has in it what policy, what our policy, what we need to add to our policy. What ASB, go back to ask the kids what they would like to see, this person be an ASB member, whatever, and that instead of having it as a something to move, that it's just presented to the board at the next meeting, and then we can give
How they
more
see it.
direction.
What their vision
Yeah,
is
and
for it.
because we've got to have some policy too, and maybe staff can write the policy that we can put in, and we can see everything, and then if we like it, we can go ahead and say, hey, next meeting, let's put it on the agenda to move.
So my suggestion with this would be simply to table it.
Okay.
I have one thing. We have actually a comment from someone in the audience that actually there is a law that allows students to vote on the board if they're a member of the board. It's AB 261.
I don't believe this board was considering a voting position though, because our bylaws,
I'm just
Don't
saying
allow
that
for
the-
that.
that
You
law
could.
says, so I don't know if
Yeah.
he wants to clarify on it. I just
Well,
wanted to say that
that's
because.
that's
there's no close
the
it out.
California law that virtually requires
right,
public schools to have a student board member.
But they don't have to vote.
of
But they
some,
don't vote.
of some type.
Yeah.
And whatever we fashion should be at least in the spirit of that law, even though that law may or may not apply to charter organizations.
Well, and I
But-
think we're all in favor of student members, but we do have to change our board policy.
We have to change our bylaws.
We have to change our
Which means
bylaws.
There's a process for that.
Yeah.
Is extensive.
We have to have a piece of board policy. We need to see what ASB,
What their vision is.
what their,
Yeah,
exactly, what their
presentation, I think
vision
that's a
is.
good idea.
Then I-
I think part of what we need to discuss and understand is what does this model for student engagement in the board look like? Because to me, it's still not clear. I mean, right now, any student can come participate as a member of the public. So even if we're not going all the way to the extreme that they're a voting member of the board, there's a lot of things in between
Absolutely.
that could look like. And I don't think all of us are talking about the same thing right now.
No,
Then again, I would like to table this, but I would like staff to come back with a presentation at the next meeting that has included in it what ASB, their input on who the student member, whatever qualifications, what our board policy, what we have to do to change our bylaws, just a presentation, so, at least we have a starting point to discuss, and then we can go from there.
and I would like to request that we have some ASB members, student
Absolutely.
members participate in that,
Yes,
okay?
absolutely.
I want to hear from them.
Absolutely,
they're-
and have them interact with the board, see,
So
so they
that
know
they
how
can-
that feels like too.
Okay?
Gary, I'm
Mhm.
sorry, so your first motion, because you didn't actually have, did you change it further down,
we're
or
just
was your,
tabling.
We're just-
your
we're
first
just-
one to
yeah,
table?
Yeah, it's just a table and then a presentation
Got it.
is in the agenda, it will be under presentation to the staff, to the board.
Mhm.
And then we can go from there, because we can discuss in a presentation, can't we?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But we do need to vote on tabling that. Do you have a
We have a
second?
So,
All those in favor of tabling item 19, in favor of a presentation at the next board meeting? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Okay. Item 20, consideration of board policy SP036, ninth grade math placement. Dr. Herman.
So I would direct your attention to the memo summarizing the changes to that board policy, which was discussed at some length at last meeting. And I have invited Ms. Rodriguez, high school counselor and now admin intern for us here at the academy, to field questions. So please, you can sit there. Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you. I'm Ariana Rodriguez. I'm an administrative intern this year. I've been a counselor here for the past 3 years. And this year I'm working directly with the counseling and math teams. So I just wanted to provide a brief overview of the ninth grade placement policy. Of course, we want all of our incoming ninth graders to be placed appropriately in their math class so that they're successful throughout their high school years. And we do that by taking a look at multiple objective academic measures of student performance, which do include looking at students' transcripts, looking at their CASP scores, teacher recommendations play a big role, and of course their performance in their Math 8 class. So when the counselors sit down and really start building the student schedules and making sure that students are placed appropriately in the math course that they need. They do look at all of those different elements to make sure that the student is appropriately placed. And last time, there were a couple of questions that stood out that I wanted to address. I remember one of the concerns being if a student who took Math 8 didn't perform as well as they could, kind of what their preparedness for Algebra 1 might be. So Algebra 1 is the lowest high school level math course for which students receive math credit. And of course, students do need 3 years of math in order to be on track to graduate. So we want to make sure that that 8th grade student is prepared to succeed in that Algebra 1 course. So, for example, if we do have a student who failed Math 8, we would then recommend that student for summer school, during which time they will be taking a remedial Math 8 class at a faster pace during summer school, during which essential standards would be covered, and that should prepare them to enter Algebra 1. Should they still either get a D or F in that remedial math course, once they get to that Algebra 1 level as a 9th grader, we would make sure to right away provide as much intervention and support as possible. So the student would be right away directed to one-on-one tutoring with that teacher. We have tutoring in the hangar every day, so they would be given that support and direction as well. The teachers would also kind of be told to be on the lookout for the student's performance in the first few weeks to make sure that any kind of instruction that needs to be differentiated gets done, and that teacher can be kind of on the lookout for that student coming to tutoring and any other support that that teacher needs to provide. So there would be.
I'm sorry. If the student who is struggling and takes the remedial math class in the summer, will their IEP still be able to be enforced during the summer since it is a faster paced course?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually have RSP teachers who worked this past summer because we offered summer school here. We had much more control over that environment. So we had our RSP case managers here providing that additional support and sometimes adjusting pace and scope for the sake of the kids.
And we had learning facilitators as well.
The previous version of this referred to placement tests. Are we no longer doing that?
I think we didn't want to be limited to if a placement test says this, then we place them here. At every level, students are given assessments, but it's multiple, how did you describe it? Multiple measures?
Yeah, so multiple objective academic measures.
It's
of
not
their
listed as
performance.
one of your criteria anymore. Does that mean you won't use it?
They really wanted to keep it to not just the test, like not the testing rep, but rather look at their transcript because the grades are really a better predictor of how they will continue, as well as teacher recommendations. So those two pieces are really critical. And then of course, just they're looking at their 6th, 7th, 8th grade year in the transcript that is telling as well. So we went away from the test and went to.
So
kind
you
of
will not be using the test?
No.
Got another question.
John, excuse me a second, while we're on the testing thing, but then it says they're going to be given a test during the first month. So how is it that we're moving away from the test?
Oh, the diagnostic checkpoint?
Yeah.
What is that?
It is
That might be the
it's
old-
updated policy. That's the old.
Placement,
It wouldn't
They're
constitute,
updated policy.
sorry, I'm reading from the public copies, but it wouldn't
Updated
constitute
policy
a
requires a
placement
shift
test,
forward.
it is considered a diagnostic, and if I'm in Algebra 1 and I perform really poorly on that diagnostic, then the counselors meet with the math team and identify additional support strategies for me. So it's not a placement test, because that would come right at the outset of the school year. It's a
right.
diagnostic to hone in on.
Well, I understand the difference between the two tests. Where's confusing is, 1 minute we're saying we're moving away from testing, and then all of a sudden it's, well, we're doing this test.
Yeah, but that's.
So there's an inconsistency there that, that's what I'm questioning.
So this
I can
part-
answer that. So the diagnostic test isn't used for placement. So I think that's the catch right before we said.
So what do we do with that?
So if I perform poorly on the diagnostic, my counselor meets with the math teacher to identify additional support strategies.
So it's an
So it's still
intervention.
data informed.
So if they score that poorly on that first test, we're not gonna change their class, we're just gonna add.
We're gonna add supports.
Well,
Interventions.
Except that whole discussion is under a title called placement checkpoint, which infers that it's a placement checkpoint.
Right.
So infers that,
Policy, would you please? The final.
Which means a decision could be made about,
which makes it a placement.
it makes it a placement test, exactly.
I was confused about that too. I was gonna ask, what's the difference between, and this is the same, kind of on the same thing, initial placement and final placement?
If it needs to be updated.
Well, it seems like that's the
Because what I just heard was, once they're placed, they're placed.
Oh,
They don't provide support.
And then support will be provided I never heard just now that there would be a change in placement. In fact, I heard the opposite. Once they're placed, they're placed.
I can clarify that too. So you see in the policy that I could be placed as a ninth grader in Algebra 2. In this way, because
Past
Algebra 1's the
Algebra 2.
lowest I can take, it
Keep on
could
going.
become a
Placement
placement
check.
checkpoint.
Right there.
It's just we can't go lower than Algebra 1 for high school credit. But it is a placement checkpoint for Algebra 2, geometry, geometry honors, Algebra 2 trigonometry.
But then what do we do? Okay, so they score low on that in geometry.
Then they
They go to
might be
algebra
moved to
one.
algebra
Then
one.
then we do move
Absolutely.
them. Okay,
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why that language is in there, to give us some latitude outside of Algebra 1. So we have
Right.
to keep the language in there.
I'll say, your ideas of using multiple measures, I'm on board with you on that 100%. I'm not real comfortable with the reduction or elimination of testing for placement purposes, primarily because everything we do, and I'm not in agreement, but let's face it, everything we do is based on a test, the test. If we continue to try to eliminate that, then we are taking away a training piece we have for our kids to take the test so they can be successful for their next level, whether it's the CASP or if it's the SAT, ACT, whatever test they're taking. They still have to develop. We have to be able to get them out of test anxiety and get them and give them testing skills. That would be a concern I have with using this and reducing
Yeah,
that.
and I hear that, and the placement test, a diagnostic is very similar to what a placement test would have looked like, and then they do the interim comprehensive assessment for CAS preparation. So they do have embedded a ton of test preparation, because I think it's critical in the way you're saying, it's just not a placement test at the outset of the school year.
Okay,
And the CAS scores do still get looked at and considered in that.
when they finally show up.
Gary?
I move adoption policy SP 036 with I like in the minutes some of the reservations that some of the board members had.
Can I ask a question before?
Do I have a second?
I second.
Go ahead.
So if an 8th grader fails Math 8 during the school year and then they fail again during the summer session, they still get placed in Algebra 1?
They get placed in Algebra 1, and there is also an option depending on how much extra intervention they need. There is also an algebra support class that they can concurrently take, which does pull those essential standards, and they get more one-on-one support in that class.
That's in
Is
place
there-
of one of their electives.
In one of the, they would have that in place.
Do we have any data on how frequently that happens? Does that impact a lot of students, or?
Historically, we've done well, so our graduation rate is at 80%.
99.4.
99.4, okay.
Yeah.
The
A through G.
The A through G is
A
80%, yeah. So we haven't dealt too much with where a student can't pass that Algebra 1 course following.
I'll gather that data for you. I'm sorry to
No
interrupt.
worries.
I will gather that data and send that out in a Friday letter, but I don't think we've ever offered more than one algebra support class. So that's indicative, but I'll pull it. It's an interesting question.
Gianna?
Mine's more, I guess it's more personal. My son is in 8th grade and he's in algebra.
Okay.
And he's significantly struggling right now. I didn't know about an algebra support class. Is this communicated to the parents about an algebra support class or to the students themselves? Because he's been going to tutoring and to the hangar every day to try to get help, because we have a goal for him by the end of the year. And if he doesn't meet it, then, yeah. But, I didn't know about that. So I was wondering if the other parents are aware of that for their students that are struggling in those books.
And definitely, the counselors have looked in placing students. They looked historically who kind of performed the lowest, and based on that, that was the initial scheduling.
But as a
placement.
parent, I had no idea it even existed, and I don't even think my son does. Not to say that he gives me all the information that he probably should, but as a parent, I know I didn't know about it. He may very well know about it and not tell me, but
But the point's very well taken.
yeah.
That I think the younger the student is, the more important it is for us to reach out to parents early. So that point is very
Mark,
well
do you have anything further?
I do. In the recourse section, third paragraph, where it says within 5 days of receipt, the charter school chief executive or designee. I don't think you should be listed in there. I personally think that should just go to the principal. And then if the resolution can't happen to the principal, with the principal, and then it can go to the CEO. I think we need to have that, number one, to establish that chain of command to the principal. And number two, having another layer of recourse for the parent will keep them out of this room, hopefully.
And
Not that I'm being protectionist here.
and gives them confidence that there have been multiple reviews.
You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah. And I don't think you need a motion from us to change that. I think you can make
Yeah,
that
I
change
can
in
just make that
language.
You see what I'm saying,
Yes,
and
I
my
do.
reasoning on
So
that?
principal or designee, and then final appeal to
Well,
the CEO, yeah, we can do that.
Just on a typo thing, in your first paragraph, second paragraph, in determining blah, 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 the Palmdale Aerospace Academy, TPAA, and you cross out charter school, and then throughout the rest of the thing, when you're gonna refer to the charter school, you say charter, you don't use the term TPAA, but you outlined in your second paragraph you were gonna refer to the school by. That's a find and replace thing that wasn't done, but you might as well fix it as long as you're fixing.
Ellen,
Because somebody thought that was a good idea to change it, so.
Done.
did you have any further comments?
No,
Or
that
concerns here?
addressed my question.
Okay. Does anybody else have any? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Item 21, consideration of dynamic therapy solutions, Appendix B contract. I believe this is a bring back from the last meeting.
Sort of.
Yes,
It's through the other company through which we contract. They were the first to find us a long-term solution for this year. As you know, we contracted with an LVN to cover the gap while we looked for somebody permanent. This meets the needs of the student.
And this is that same student?
That is
correct. Okay.
And there is provision in the contract, with a little bit of give that if something changes and we no longer need these services, we can terminate without a huge penalty.
I so moved it.
Do you have a second?
Yeah, I've got comments once, I'll second it for discussion.
Are there any comments?
It says it's Appendix B, we're voting on it as if this is a contract. I feel reluctant to vote on an appendix in the absence of a contract. That it's
You've
attached.
already approved the contract.
I get
We-
that, but
Yeah.
I'm not accustomed to seeing item come as a standalone appendix without it being attached to something. Because basically, this is not really an appendix, this is an addendum.
Was this not the item that we requested a do not exceed on? I can't remember.
And
No, when the DTS contract was through, because this is our third year in this.
and then while
Oh, the original.
while she's looking for that, you didn't happen to talk to the SELPA about doing an inter-SELPA and getting VI services through the office over here on 30th Street?
Well, I think,
Because they've got VI and they've got orientation and mobility.
so the conversation with the SELPA did not involve an inter-SELPA agreement. We just talked with the SELPA and didn't really get any farther.
Well, if you talk to El Dorado, they're not in a position to provide you
But, and there are,
services.
there are SELPAs, so.
But the local SELPA is. They've got orientation and mobility, they've got VI services. I question whether 30 hours for the year will keep the wolves off your door for this particular. If you've got a blind student that needs VI services and orientation and mobility, 30 hours a week, all that does is you've agreed that the kid needs services, but you haven't ponied up to deliver it. It's basically the no man's land that you're walking into. Because I don't think 30 is probably enough, even if the IEP says that. But my big thing here is this doesn't look like a contract.
Right, because it really is just it's called an appendix, but it's an addendum. Have you found the original contract yet?
So, I
Is
mean,
that
I have
last
so
meeting?
many things saved for DTS, so this is the one that we just did at the last meeting.
So DTS is our speech and language provider.
Right.
That's what we have approved them for. The contract that we brought a month ago was a separate provider for this, and then they couldn't provide these services in time. So we went back to DTS, who provides our speech services, and they said, yes, we can just do an appendix to your contract.
We have already,
We
okay,
have
so
all- the board
what
has
you're
approved
saying is we've already approved the contract
With
with
DTS,
Dynamic Therapy Solutions.
that's correct.
And what you found out is the one we had questions about. I remember because of the way the contract was written, we had
Correct.
questions with that other.
Correct.
So then DTS said, well, we can do this, we have an appendix. So
Yes,
all
sir.
we're doing is
And we're-
adding
We're
this
pulling up the
to the
contract.
contract that we've already agreed to
Then
prior meetings.
Correct.
Okay, so I guess what
it's
John's.
really it's an addendum or an amendment, not an appendix.
Well, but I think what John's saying is part of it. I guess what he would have liked to see was the original contract with
Understood.
this, but we had already passed.
Because here's what you would
the
use an
contract.
appendix for in this case. If you had never contemplated doing O&M services or VI services or DHH services, you've never contemplated those services from Dynamic Therapies. And so they never put them on their price list. They could do an Appendix B that just listed them on the price list. But putting them on the price list is not the same as contracting for services. And so what they've done is they've provided you a price list and tried to pass it off as a contract. And I'm saying that I don't buy it as a contract.
But we have a
We already
contract.
have
right?
it, we already approved it.
So
For a
this
certain
is,
specified amount. Is it, well, I don't know. Is it a master contract for all services not to exceed, $150,000 and we're below that? Well, whatever, this is adding, 50 some odd thousand dollars,
Who's providing
$60,000 to it.
services for the student now, and when does that contract expire?
Ms. Price, can you answer that question? Mr. Morales. Mr. Morales, can you answer that question? Who's providing her services right now?
Who's providing her services right now?
Mhm.
Right now, we have the LVN, which we had already contracted. She's on for a trial period till we have further solutions behind. At this moment in time, we do have several kind of ways of doing it. DTS has offered to kind of, on a trial basis, allow this paraprofessional to be here and kind of observe what's going on with the student for this past week. So the paraprofessional has been coming in to observe and see what that job entails.
Mr. Morales, how much longer do we have the LVN?
We have the LVN until October 4th.
There we go.
And the LVN is on contract from another agency, correct?
That's correct.
Correct.
That's the one at the last meeting, we talked about, okay,
Right.
well, we'll
Right.
accept this as the prices, but we need a specific contract that has everything, including the person's name and how many hours, but I don't see that on this agenda. So we never got what we asked for on the previous.
So,
They didn't want to do it. The other people,
correct,
Yeah.
so,
they didn't
that's
want, see, we couldn't get them to amend the contract. That's.
Get-
she
Well, what
never-
they-
actually, she just took another gig, that
Oh.
LVN took another
Job.
assignment.
Mr. Morales?
The previous company we were trying to get with was Invo. They had offered to have all these extra services they couldn't deliver.
That was the contract.
That was the one you were referring to in the last meeting. In between all that, DTS offered, because they did have extra people to actually provide these services, so they offered this and drew up this appendix because these were not
So the
contracted.
LVN is working, who does that person work for?
That person works for Maxim, I
And,
believe.
and have we approved the contract for that?
I believe you have,
Do
because.
you believe we have or we have?
No, didn't
Yeah,
we do that
because
at the last?
Yeah,
that
you
was
approved
received,
maximum.
yes.
At the last
We didn't
meeting?
approve a contract. We said, we're gonna let you do this, bring them back a contract for ratification.
I thought that was the Invo
That was
contract.
Invo.
That's the Invo contract.
We didn't know that Maxim would be able to provide the LVN services. That was over the course of a shortened period of time, which we did in order to cover services. So now this is a long-term.
Be
Let-
very careful with contracted services and make sure that the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed. Having people in here without sufficient contracts, this feels squishy. I don't like it.
Well, I am not particularly convinced that dynamic therapies can provide the VI or orientation and mobility, because that's not typically what I know them to do. So this student has disabilities that must be addressed.
Correct.
I have concerns about not approving this because we have to fulfill the terms of the IEP. My concern is that we have a double or triple check in place so somebody can evaluate those services.
I'm trying to pull up the.
I have the details.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to know.
details.
And I'm really concerned about stuff that doesn't look like a contract. And using that as authorization for.
I think Jillian's found the contract.
I mean, you guys approved the DTS contract and the Maxim. The DTS was actually approved in July,
Right.
and Maxim
For
was-
what services?
I mean, do you want me to read you the entire?
There should have
contract?
been a price, no, there should have been a price list attached to it with a list of services and costs.
And then an actual contract that says not to exceed.
It's contracted for $375,000 for 2019-2020 school year.
A maximum of.
It's a maximum.
Okay.
And then it breaks it down between the middle, high school, and the elementary.
I remember seeing that. But attached to that contract, was there a list of services? Services that they provide.
And a price list.
There might be a different one.
Yeah.
So increasing this contract by $60,000 keeps us within our do not exceed. But where is our list of assurances they can provide if with the original contract, those services weren't listed?
So, no, this would be an added 59,000.
Yeah, that would be above.
This is gonna be above the 375. That was for the whole.
The speech and language.
The speech
for
and
both
language for both schools.
That can't be done with an appendix. That's an amendment.
Well,
It is an amendment to the contract because we approved it do not exceed. So we have to be very careful here. We cannot cut off services to a student who requires them.
Nor can we
I
do
don't-
things that are not legitimate.
I don't know that you guys approved the do not exceed for the DTS contract.
That's that 375,000 in there.
Mhm.
That's it.
Well, and just to kind of support what John is saying, I mean, the DTS contract very specifically speaks to speech and language, AAC/AT, and learning disabilities.
Because that's what they do.
So Laura, is there a possibility, I guess the thing we're looking at is there a way to have this nurse or somebody extend their contract or extend something to at least the end of October or until a week after our next meeting so that maybe we can get an addendum from DTS or are we, because what I'm hearing, one is the due process of the student. And the second thing is, I'm hearing that this may not pass the board in its.
My primary concern is the safety and care of the student. This is a student with substantial needs, more than our staff can provide. So I do need somebody with that training. I don't know whether the person currently providing the care can continue. If they can, I can have them do that, and we can get this hammered out to your satisfaction and bring something back that.
I think the vendor just got lazy and didn't send you a contract. But That's just me.
So I can do that. If, on the other hand, I can't get that extended, what I'll do is I will ask the board president to consider a special meeting so that we can move forward faster on this one topic item.
Or you bring this back as a ratification. It will be approved as a ratification, knowing that it's a special ed kid. But I'd rather have a good contract and ratify it after the fact than
If you're comfortable with
approve,
that, then yes. I
than
can do
approve
that.
going forward.
Okay.
Now, having said that, now I've got concerns that we've got an LVN that we haven't approved. That's
No,
what
we did approve the LVN.
I thought that was the one that we said, we've got to bring this back with specifics on
No, that was the other contract. We had 2 contracts.
2 LVNs?
No,
Prior to John.
no.
I think it
We
was prior to you
had
being on
2
the
special
board.
services
Yeah.
contracts.
I
The
am,
one we thought we were going to go through.
I am content to bring this back as a ratification because I absolutely cannot cut off services, but I need to know that the person who is providing these services truly has the
The
skills.
qualification.
Absolutely.
Understood.
And please contact your cell phone and get the ball rolling for low incidence services on an inter-cell phone, because that is not difficult to set up, and it will be better quality and cheaper than going through a private industry contractor.
So tabling this item would probably meet that need.
Who made the
Tabling.
motion?
I think I made a motion.
Would you change,
Uh,
amend your motion?
The table.
To table, yes, to table. Table the approval of the dynamic therapy solutions appendix B contract.
I'd like to extend that to say that services will continue for the student.
As
Is there a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Item 22, consideration of Project to Inspire contract. Dr. Herman?
So in your summary memo on this contract, you'll see it replaces our very successful PK program. This is at the request of our parents who enjoy participating in PK and are looking for an even more robust experience. It has been reviewed and recommended by our DLAC group. And if, pending the board's approval, we'll take it to school site council for consideration for Title I fees.
I so move.
I'll second it.
I have discussion. Really quick, Dr. Herman, PIQE is?
Acronym, what does this one stand for? Go.
Required,
Quality education. And then it went to our ID, what?
Our DLAC.
Our DLAC?
Our District
DLAC?
English Language Advisory
Okay.
Committee.
Thank you. That's all. Okay.
I've actually seen Project to Inspire, I think through the State Foundation, we actually paid for it through the Pondville School District. And I was really impressed. The object of it was to get parents trained, and they go through levels of training, and eventually they teach the classes, and at that point, there is no cost impact. You know, I don't know if they ever got to that point. I left before they did, but that's kind of the plan, so I liked it.
Are there any further questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item 23, consideration of, not even going to try it, mental health program, parent program. Dr. Herman?
So this is a program that comes to us at no charge, but is, again, reviewed and supported by our DLAC. It's a parent education group supporting mental health care and awareness. Seems very positive. There's a lot of enthusiasm behind it.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Actually, I did have a question when I read this. This is targeting only one population?
Primarily, but of course, everyone can participate.
So participation is open to all.
Of course.
No comment. At some point.
At some
At some point, all of
At
us.
some point. Is there no further discussion, questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Item 24, consideration of appointment of TPAA Foundation Board Director.
And I would hand it over to the recommendation of the Board Development Committee.
Patty.
Who are all
Accurate.
pointing their fingers at one another.
Wow, I feel sandwiched between them.
I would say,
Whoever's gonna talk to the board, okay, great, go back.
well,
Okay.
the Board Development Committee interviewed candidates as directed by the board, both for the foundation and for the board seats. So they did their due diligence and they bring their recommendation to you for these next two
Okay.
items.
This is specific for the foundation.
This is the foundation, and we, after extensive interviews that day, we have determined that we would like to recommend Trixie Flores for that position.
This is on the foundation.
This
This
is
is
on
our
the
foundation.
foundation.
Is that your motion?
Yes.
I saw, well, I'm not.
It's our recommendation.
That's our
All
recommendation.
right.
Well,
Our
doesn't that
recommendation.
constitute a motion?
I-
Yes.
Then I'll second.
So I move to.
Patty moves, Dr. Porter seconds. Is there any conversation,
I think Trixie will be
discussion?
She was really good.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Nope.
Item 25, consideration of appointments to the Palmdale Aerospace Academy Board of Directors. Mrs. Reardon?
I'm going to,
Here we go. That's all right.
We
Delegate.
have, okay, now my question would be, there has to be a motion before we have a discussion?
We,
No, but we're just
Hold on.
no,
recommending.
recommending.
We're recommending and then that
All right.
can be made
Okay.
into a motion.
The recommendation, first off, yes, spent a lot of time talking to all these people, had a great time, quite frankly. And any of these people will be good for us. But our recommendation is that at this point in time, based on the current chemistry of this board and where we need to evolve, that we do not expand at this point, that we leave our numbers at 9. We can send letters of thank you to these people, because again, these people will be fine additions to us, but at this point, we feel that right now we've got a good mix here, and we've got a lot to grow before we start adding additional.
I'll move to accept that recommendation for discussion purposes.
do you have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion, questions for the Board Development Committee?
Thank you for that recommendation, because that's kind of what I've been thinking, without having spoken with anybody, that at this point in our development, and I don't think an expansion is in our best interest.
We have enough new blood sitting at the
Yes.
table right now
Yes.
that we need to
Yes.
blend before we start expanding.
I think it's a great idea.
Is moving back up to 11 people considered an expansion though, if that's how many slots are allocated?
It's authorized, but not demanded.
Okay.
I think 9 is our minimum.
Nine
Yeah.
is the minimum.
9 is the minimum.
We can go up to as many as 12.
Did you have a?
Yeah, I was just going to say, as a board development, we're trying to develop the board that we have. And we have lots of work to do as
And you keep adding to it.
as demonstrated on our board evaluations. So, yeah, we think it's a good, and then at some point when we feel like we're really strong board, very strong board members individually and collectively, then at that point we might suggest that. But I think we come from many different disciplines, and I think that's a really good, we have a good board.
Is there any further discussion?
Thank you, folks.
I appreciate your many hours of work, truly. All those in favor of accepting the Board Development Committee's recommendation?
Wait, I have another question.
Sure. I'm sorry, did I forget to ask? I
No,
apologize.
I'm still
It's okay.
processing, so I didn't have a question a few seconds ago. So based on the interviews that the board development committee conducted with everyone, did it seem like any of the candidates would be a good fit at some point? But it's just, you think there's too many new people on the board, or was it that they're also not as strong?
Yes, no, there's, all of these candidates could fit. There are a couple that would be really good. If we were hurting, if we had a current opening, there's two of them, we agreed on this is the first one we want, this to be the second one we'd recommend. But no, they're all good, and all of them would be a good addition. But,
And, you know, there's
I
a,
just want to leave it.
and you can tell me to shut up if you want me. You know, there's another consideration, personally. This was designed to represent a couple of elected bodies, the board was. It was meant to represent the city of Palmdale and the Palmdale School District and some others.
And the community.
And the community. And if we, I'm just expressing an opinion. If we march too far down the at-large road, then what we're really doing is washing down the input of elected bodies, and we're getting further away from public accountability for a charter. And that's opposed to the sentiment in Sacramento, the direction they'd like to see a representation on charter school boards go. And I personally, that's why I'm glad that you came to this conclusion, because it's consistent with what I think we really need to do, is be mindful not to water down the input from elected bodies and their representation.
Dr. Herman, before I call for the vote, I'd like to request that the Academy send letters of thanks
Of course.
and appreciation,
Mhm.
and to let them know, each of the candidates, that we will notify them when we have an opening on the board, and we would like to reconsider them at that time. So that the letter is clear, they're not being turned down for their qualifications, but that the board has chosen not to,
Got it.
if indeed
Right.
that's the vote. Okay. Are there any other comments, questions?
Just so I'm clear, we're not appointing anybody.
We're not appointing anybody. Wait, that's the motion. No, wait a minute. That's the motion. We haven't voted yet. And before I call for the vote again, Helena, are we good?
11 right now?
We have
We
9.
have 9.
We have our minimum.
We have.
And did you notice all
have
9 are here today?
And I,
Okay.
okay,
So the one that I'm seeing here, James Durrell.
he has
one.
resigned,
Resign.
Okay.
okay?
Okay.
All those in favor of the motion of not increasing the size of the board at this time, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay. Moving on to our consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Done. I'd like to know if there's any discussion.
Gary wants to go home.
No,
so-
I want to look for, I want to look for your phone. I know
No,
it's somewhere around here.
Okay, let me, Mr. Roberts, could we amend your motion to ask the board if there's anybody who wants to pull items off and then approve the rest of the consent agenda together?
Yes, you.
Would you
I
move, would
moved
you?
that. I moved
Do we
that.
have a second?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Do we have any directors who want to pull one more items?
I don't know. I'm just.
Mark?
I'd like to pull student trips, conferences, staff list, and ASB events.
Student trips,
Student trips,
conferences,
D, E, F,
And I.
and part of it, I.
and I. All right.
Okay.
Then could I have a motion to approve A, B, C, G, and H.
Did.
A second?
Second?
There is no discussion on those consent agenda items. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, could I have a motion to approve item D, student trips?
To approve?
Hold on, because you got, my computer died since our
Oh,
meeting. So I'm trying to handwrite, I'm not as fast
You know what, just throw something at the chair, she'll respond.
So we approved
So I know, so I saw that you approved all, the ones that you
A,
approved, the
B.
ones you pulled.
So here's where
Did we
we are.
have a motion and a second on those, or was that
Approving
just
those?
your
Yeah,
original?
we did.
Yeah.
No, we did, we
We
took
did.
a motion and a
wasn't?
second.
Okay.
was the
I
second?
moved, who seconded?
For a second.
He moved,
John.
Gary moved,
Okay.
Dr. Porter was the second, okay?
Thank you.
So items A, B, C, G, and H were approved?
And the other-
Okay, now so that we can discuss student trips, we need a motion to approve.
Okay. I
Second.
Okay,
I was like, what is, you know?
So-
is there,
Now I'm back
Are
up
you-
and running,
Oh,
so,
I was gonna say, do you need
Again.
an extension cord?
No, no, I got
You're
I
good?
got it.
okay.
But now I can be fast.
Okay, student trips, is there, we have a motion to approve? Is there any conversation?
I have conversation.
Yes.
Converse.
Surprise.
Okay, concerns I have with student trips is there's not enough information, number one. How many students are going, what students are going,
How much?
what's the criteria, how much does it cost? And none of that's on here. So,
So what are you approving?
yeah, I mean, and the descriptions, I mean, a couple of these descriptions are a little bit, what the heck does that mean? So it needs to be a little bit more
Well-
concise. Now, and don't get me wrong, the Cal Poly trip,
I'm sure that's.
I'm all behind those. I mean, those I know are good trips.
Desert Woodland, I'm sure is pretty good.
But what does it do?
So,
These don't give me any information about where are these in the, how are we budgeted for them? How are we choosing the students to go to them? Are they during the school day? Are they after school? Are they on weekends? There's not enough information.
internally, the process goes through absolutely all of that. And there is a fairly thorough process that we
Okay.
go through to approve any student trips. The reason that I don't bring that to the board is that level of operational involvement. That's not the level at which I would expect you to
You're
participate.
asking us to make a decision
So,
Well,
without,
Could I make a suggestion?
sure.
As you've done with some of the other stuff that you've provided us, this piece of paper, give us this as a memo, and then the information that you've used in your process, how many kids, how they're gonna get there, which days, how many,
no student names.
yeah, don't need names, like, we've got 60.
50 kids at
For example,
$1,000 each.
So,
Is Brian still here? Oh, you don't. Okay, your Cal Poly, is that open to everyone, or is it that girl-only trip?
Engineering.
The reason I ask that is because most of the schools that I know that do that Cal Poly trip is part of the Femineers program, so it's a woman-only trip.
Wait.
So ours,
Which one is
ours
it?
is part of our STEM classes.
Okay, well, and that's probably one of the, but that's what my issues are.
Okay,
maybe we could
I have a-
scan those
I have a-
Yeah, we can
documents
just
and.
scan
hold on,
Whatever is easy,
I have
I'm
a-
looking for just more.
I have a comment.
That's what I was
Gary?
One of our fiduciary duties is to move and accept the budget. And in that budget, it has it's gonna have money for student trips. And I think what we have to allow, maybe what Laura, you can bring us is when somebody wants to take a field trip, where does that, what's the, what do we have in place? You said it goes to a committee, maybe that's all we need, but I don't wanna,
Micromanagement.
it's almost getting, it's almost getting micromanaged in some of these things. If we don't approve it, there's a time thing, and I just feel that we have to give the staff the ability to, hey, this is a field trip, the kids are on
For me,
it.
if there was
We've
one
got
column that said
what the price.
20 kids, $1,500.
I think,
Whatever would be
you know,
fine.
one of my questions is, yes, obviously you can distinguish with most of these what part of their education this is supporting. The one I couldn't figure out is down towards the bottom. The park,
A finance part?
yeah, when I read that, I couldn't figure out what that's supporting at all.
So it's actually an extraordinary trip, and it's one that has to do with money management and finances when you graduate from high school and go on to college, and what do you do?
And if it had said that, I would have
It's
understood.
amazing. I thought you were gonna say Six Flags, which I
No.
have a hard time with too, but
I-
Who pays for it? Doesn't someone pay for it themselves?
Yeah,
Yes.
but still, it's a school trip,
But you should
so.
set that physics day at Knott's Berry Farm. The problem, the financing part is based on some of the things that keep hitting the newspaper, when it says, students will be given a unique life profile. What the heck, what does that mean?
It's a simulation, essentially. Here's the conditions,
Okay.
and what happens when you do the financial planning and how does it come?
They do that for foster kids, they give them a job, they go,
But
okay,
it-
you're
Yeah,
gonna
you
be
get a job, you get an education. you get
mailman,
all
here's
that.
what you're gonna be.
But that's not what that says.
I'm looking at it from a non-educator parent. A unique lifestyle. Does that mean a lifestyle choices?
It's the wording.
No good deed
I
goes
can
unpunished.
definitely scan the paperwork we use, because
Okay.
it has all that on there, and the
And-
teacher
and-
who's doing
and-
it fills out all the
and I'm
stuff,
good with
and then
it.
you can read it all, and then it's not.
Gee, I don't know that we need that level.
Right.
I
So,
There's
well,
a
what I'm
curiosity, there
saying
is a
is,
curiosity.
but I'm just saying, when you look at some of the verbiage on here, remember, I taught junior high, I'm used to twisting this stuff.
I think a closer description on some items, because some of those are very clear. But if we could have 23 students at no cost, 23 students at $10 a student, whatever,
Got it.
okay?
Fiscal impact column.
Exactly. Because we are supposed to be paying attention to that.
But by the same token, what Jillian's saying, she could scan that other paperwork in, take you about another 3 minutes. And that could be as an addendum. Then if some fool like me, someone like me has a question, then I can drill down to it and it doesn't get in anybody else's way.
I want to be, can I take your point, and I understand and I don't disagree, but I want to be careful we are not overloading with what we're asking for.
Details.
So if we could start there with a column, financial
Yeah,
impact
but I just
column.
wanna make sure, okay, so we want a column that has like the number of students on the trip, and then the cost of the trip.
You can put them in the same column, Jillian.
Nice,
Do
sounds
you know
good.
what you're comfortable doing? And perhaps a better explanation
Of the
on-
trip.
about the trips. And the only one there I didn't get was the finance part.
So that one that one I'll go back and look at the original paperwork and then what happened, because that's somebody who helped me with this part of it, so I don't know
Okay.
if that was a description the teacher wrote on the thing, or if that's what
I
he
think it was
interpreted.
a copy and paste on
Yeah,
the website.
so I might
Okay.
have, that one might be a little bit more, then we'll do some more research if it's not a good enough description.
All right.
Okay. Is there any further conversation or discussion?
Was the motion to approve?
Yes, the motion is to approve.
All right. Roll.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? E, conferences.
This is one you pulled up.
Yes, okay, so the motion is to approve.
Mhm.
And we have,
Second.
my issue with the conferences is similar to the student trips. My first question would be, why don't we have them scheduled out for the whole year? Let me just throw these all out and you can answer as you come across. I see a task conference that has David and Jesus both going to that one for counselors. And then we come back to the LA Sheriff's one on 10/10 and only David goes. And that one I would think you would want all your counselors and probably all of your admin to go to also because of the topic being covered. And with as much issues as we have going on now with the mass shootings and everything, I think that being able to target, or identify, I shouldn't say target, identify potential problems would be of utmost importance at this point.
I want her to be able to answer questions.
Let's see, what else do I have?
Well, Mark is putting his thoughts together. If you want to address why the full year calendar is not there.
It's difficult to see second semester now for many teachers. Some conferences are known, but some aren't. And everybody kind of allocates their resources differently. When we had the change to our not receiving our advanced apportionment, we cut back on a lot of first semester conferences because of cash flow. So that's why you're not seeing the entire counseling staff going anywhere.
Okay.
Or there's just, it's a cash flow issue, and that
Okay.
can't happen first semester.
Right.
Second semester maybe, but at this point, I've kind of told everybody to just hold on. Let's make sure that the cash flow works out first semester as it needs to, and then we'll move forward. So that's why we're light all across here. We're also changing our focus from sending people to conferences to bringing expertise in. And, we've done that with the math department. We've brought in subject matter expert a couple of times with some success.
Okay.
Mark, do you have anything?
No, I'm good now.
You're good now?
Okay.
You have?
No.
All those in favor of approval of the conference schedule?
Sorry, do we have a second on that one? I like.
Yeah. Dr. Porter,
Okay.
second.
So is that gonna be for all of them? Cause I didn't.
No,
That
that,
was the
No, that's
conference.
just,
No, that's
I
just
didn't
the,
hear him second. Sorry.
he seconded both of them.
okay. So all those in favor of approving the conference schedule? Aye. Opposed? Updated staff list.
Motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Jillian, are you left-handed or right-handed?
I'm left-handed.
You're left-handed? Okay. I just need to know where to move because you're gonna start throwing stuff at me and I don't want to come across that I'm just being
Pulling all of our stuff?
that I'm just being nitpicky about stuff. but-
Don't worry, I don't have good aim anyway.
Okay, I feel better. First off, I gotta poke up, what do the yellow lines mean?
Oh, yellow lines are our new employees that were added since you last saw the list.
Because
Okay.
they're in alphabetical order.
Yeah.
Okay. My big issue on this, there's a couple of things. This is really hard to read. I would suggest that it gets divided up by category and then alphabetized within category instead of a straight alphabetizing, if I could say it.
Like a classified list, a certified list,
Admin list,
management list.
Exactly,
All right.
something to break that up and you can alphabetize within. Is former employee list. I don't know why we have that, why we need that.
If you were comparing from month to month
Uh-huh,
and you saw that somebody's name disappeared, that's how you would know.
okay, then with the next list, does that name disappear from the?
Yes, correct.
Oh,
There
okay,
was.
that answers, that's that,
It
okay.
should be, right?
No, actually, it's a running list.
And that's
Well,
the-
they should only be there once, it should only be.
Well, we could change, well, it was what our last board president had asked that we do. So if you,
Oh.
honestly, if you guys wanna change it, that's nice.
I want to simplify it for you. What if we just looked at new hires, new terminations, they moved,
Yeah.
whatever. Then we didn't need to see them again. If we had a counselor leave and you haven't filled that by the next board meeting, if it just said open,
Okay.
then the question to you is, are we having trouble and you say, no, actually, we've determined we don't need that position.
So-
That would shorten that up for you considerably.
By implication, if we're approving this, are we essentially ratifying the hire?
Yeah.
Is
Yes.
that what we're doing?
Correct.
And
Then,
terminations.
then we really need to get out of the weeds and only have new hires and terms. Because
And
basically, yeah, and open positions that are gonna stay open or are open, because there's so much weeds that, yeah. That would be,
Good
and it's
point.
less work for you, hopefully.
This one's, it's actually not, because this one's actually, this is taken from HR, they've taken out all their confidential information, and this is what they've shared with us, and then we highlight it, but it's
It would be
most
easier
times
if
we can
it was
easily
just
break
the-
it down for you,
just
it's not a big.
the new hires and the terms,
Yep.
since the previous,
Then we're ratifying, and
and,
that's all we
yeah,
should
and we're
ratify.
ratifying.
Because that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and just show the open positions.
Open, who
Opens,
left.
and that,
then
yeah.
open.
and then we don't need to see those folks again.
Yeah.
Are there any further questions?
Yeah, I've got a few
Mark?
other things.
Okay,
There needs a standardization in job titles. For example, this one teacher I'm looking at here says STEM teacher, math teacher, science teacher, middle school teacher is what their job title is. Then I come down here and I'm looking at, let's see, where did you go? I lost my
That would be
counter
HR.
exam.
This is an internal document, so these aren't official job titles. So what you're looking at, and I'm sorry, Mr. Weiss, what you're
No,
looking
that's
at
fine.
is an internal document. So these aren't the official titles that necessarily appear on the job description. In fact, for a teacher, the job description says teacher. That's it. You know, it
Okay.
doesn't even list subjects. So this is just internally, tracking where they fit on the master schedule, if you will. So
Okay,
um,
okay.
I think
Because
that,
as I was looking at it, I
Right.
see someone
That's
that's
why
got
it's-
4 preps and they're multiple subject teachers, and I see somebody else with
No.
4 prep.
and that's.
And it's
fine.
just okay.
You know what, Laura, it might be, like, I think probably in the Palmdale School District, they do it, in the high school district, we would have teacher's name, where they fall on the schedule, how much, for hiring them, if it's a new hire, it's gonna have their data their name, data how much they're gonna be making, and I don't even think we even look at their credential
No.
or whatever,
Anything.
and that's it. And boom, 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 these are the ones we hired. Classified would be the same, it's custodial at number 1, and then those who leave, because we want to ratify them leaving our employment, boom, that's it. And I think we don't even have to worry about what they're teaching, or what we hire.
Okay.
Okay, another question.
That would be a lot easier.
Maybe I misunderstood, but do we still have crossing guards that belong to us?
We have traffic monitors in the parking lots and now on the sidewalk out there. Crossing guards we contract with.
Okay, because some of the descriptions say crossing guard, but that's our traffic, that's our
Like I
traffic.
said, it's an internal document, so
Um,
it's imprecise in that, I apologize.
There's an RSP case manager that's a classified position. I thought
No, my RSP case managers are certificated, so.
that's not how it's listed, just so you know. And yeah,
If,
later I
you
can
know,
give you the name of who
a
it's.
special ed clerk, that would be.
Yeah, I
reasonable,
do have support that's
Yeah, well, this one is-
classified, but a case manager is
Yeah,
certificated.
that would be contrary to code.
That's all the trouble I'm causing on this one.
so we have a motion to approve and a second. We've given you our input. Are there any other comments, questions, suggestions? All those in favor of approving the staff list?
All right.
Aye. Did we have one more?
ASB
Yeah,
events.
ASB.
I move
Okay.
ASB events.
Second.
Do we have any comments or questions?
Yes. As soon as I figure them out. This would also go along with the cost of revenue on these events? What are they costing us? Are they costing us anything?
No, these are school events that are supported by ASB. So, anything that,
Explain what you mean by supported by ASB.
they're putting the event on. So Spirit Week, ASB does Spirit Week.
They do
You
They,
know,
well, they,
First day is
Fundraiser.
Superhero Day, the second
Okay,
day.
So it's revenue
Family Day.
neutral?
Correct.
okay, the trip to Legoland. ASB pays for that?
They fundraise for that.
They fundraise for that one, but where's the trip to Legoland?
That's an engineering thing, Legoland.
I know exactly, but.
And
That's-
speakers,
that's
are
not
they
my-
paying for speakers?
So, no, we, as part of our LCAP, we have money set aside for student speakers. These are of the educational, sort of inspirational variety. And we have funding for 2 of those. So I guess they're all not revenue neutral. But that would also come through as an expense, so you'll see that when we pay for it.
So this is ASB expenses?
Correct.
So with-
Except for the
It's basically
speakers,
having
like
us
I said.
approve the events, I don't think.
Yeah, you're not
it's not a
approving the
budgetary thing.
expenses,
We're
you're
just
just
approving it,
approving
yeah,
the
they
events.
can
Yeah,
do this
well,
and yeah, they
now
can.
I'm going down a different rabbit hole.
You are, you and Alice.
Well, okay, so if ASB expenses are spent, who approves ASB expenses?
So ASB does, but they're also part of your monthly financials.
Right,
We're not
and
gonna
we
see it in the
see them
financial
at the very end of the financial. We are now getting an ASB reconciliation every month.
Okay.
So as long as what's on the reconciliation matches what's on the event,
Okay.
are there any other questions or concerns or discussion?
So just so I'm clear for when we're putting this together for you guys, do you wanna see a column if there's a fiscal impact, or are you okay with it being on the financial statement?
Well, that's where we asked for it. We asked for it on the financial
Yeah,
statement.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
So that's where we would,
Okay.
I would
This is
be,
just
that's
approving
where I would be looking. If I had
Okay.
some concerns, I'm gonna look at ASB, what are they spending money on?
That we're just approving this as a calendar.
That's
Yeah,
essentially what.
Essentially, part of our umbrella liability requires that the board acknowledge all events that are school events. These are
Right.
ASB events, so yeah, it's a calendar. This isn't a financial approval.
This is not a financial approval. And so when we look at the finances, if the revenue and expense matches that, then that's all we need to see. Okay. Ellen, did you have any comments or?
Not on this one.
I do have a quick question, since we've taken the time to look into this so in depth. The senior versus staff dodgeball game. How
That's what we used to
how is
Liability insurance looking at that.
They use
I
beach,
had that conversation with somebody.
they use beach balls.
Can I just say they're very careful and they have to promise that no one gets hurt?
It's better than donkey basketball, come on, I mean, it's the dodgeball, can't be that.
Truthfully, our insurance has given this a blessing. We're okay.
We're wearing mouth guards and helmets.
Pads and bubble wrap.
You're on the staff side.
That's a good question, Michelle. Is there anything else? All those in favor of approving the ASB event calendar?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Item 27, Board Director Reports.
I've got, does that include like
No,
questions?
no,
No.
They're easy
No.
questions. Even you can answer, well, maybe.
Good night, John.
Good night.
Good night, John.
John,
The
No.
attendance reports we get?
Mhm.
What I'd like to see is the number of frequent flyers by grade. So like, there's been almost, 20 days almost for the upper grades? Who's got 2 or more? Because those are your potential chronics.
We have a team that actually is working on that, and we look at that data all the time, we can share.
Because, you know, once they go 18 days?
Yeah.
Even if it's the first day of the month, the first month of the year, they're chronic.
That's right, and we
So-
know, it's a huge deal.
And, and then whatever efforts they're doing at correcting the attendance of the frequent flyers. Because awards for good attendance just rewards the kids whose moms get them here anyway, but yeah.
Do we have any other director reports or comments?
I have two very quick comments. One was I really enjoyed back to school night and the presentation, the little videotape presentation that Ms. Morales did, highlighted our board meetings, showed them exactly where the agenda is kept outside, and I thought that was very nice. I mean, you know, either they're very confident we're taking care of things because we don't see them breaking down the doors, but I did appreciate that it was articulated that families are invited to come and attend our board meetings and told exactly how to do that. So I appreciated that. Also, I was fortunate enough to attend the back to, was it
Tea with teachers.
Tea with teachers. And I didn't see tea, but I saw a lot of teachers.
I don't know where that.
And they had hot dogs and hamburgers, and they were feeding families and kids, and I just saw everybody be so surprised when they came that they didn't have to pay for things, that it was really very open and very welcoming. And we had our ELAC and our cafeteria, and everybody was there with lines, and there were lines for 3 hours talking to teachers, and every single teacher gave every family pretty much as much time as they wanted to sit and talk specifically about their child's needs, what they might see crop up in the classroom. I hadn't seen anything like it before, and I thought if I had had something like that when I was trying to wrestle my kids and put them into kindergarten or first grade or TK, that would have been so incredibly reassuring to me. So I was just incredibly proud of all of the staff that was there and pulled that off and made that happen. I thought it was just a great thing for the community and a very unique experience for the academy. So
And to
thank you,
add on
everybody,
to
for
that, even for the upper grades, because it's a new school to them, you know, my son's coming in the third, so he was really excited and loved every minute of it as well. Kept going back and forth to the lines, asked them different questions, even though they were very irrelevant. But, you know, it was great to have it, and my other son, my older son, the one that's already here, was trying to show him everything and where this is at and where they go and what they do. So it was nice for him to see that his big brother, what his big brother does.
Any other directors with comments? Okay, Dr. Herman?
I've got pages and pages. No, I'm kidding. One report.
Scary is shaking over here.
One report. As of this morning, when I pulled the numbers, we have awarded a total of 2,355 seats to students. That's all grade levels. Our budget is built on 2,314. Part of the reason that we load up in the beginning of the year is that over the course of the year, the way our program is, we have difficulty filling seats mid-year. It's hard for kids to jump in and be successful. So loading up early helps us maintain through the semester. Having said that, 2,355 is how many seats we've offered. But the live enrollment, these are, pardon the crudity of the expression, but these are the behinds in seats. The kids I've seen taking up space in chairs, 2,343. So we have 12 in the pipeline. So as far as all of that goes, we're in good shape.
Yes, thank you.
That's it for me.
Cheers. I need a motion.
Move to adjourn.
Please, thank you.
We're adjourned.
Mine right off.
Shower.